Come summer, India begins to feel like being on a frying pan. Most cities suffer from heat waves in varying degrees, but it's really around the month of May when we begin to speak about heat waves as a national emergency. Heat waves over the last decade have become far more frequent, deadlier, and hotter. August 2024, if you remember, will go down in history as being the year with the highest temperatures that the earth ever saw since temperatures were recorded in 1880. India, in fact, saw its worst summer in the last 125 years. And in fact, interestingly, the last financial year was when 14 million Indians bought their air conditioners, which was a jump in over 30% from the year before that. This number is projected to go up to 30 million by 2030. The point is quite clear. Cities are turning into heat islands. Our vulnerable populations are suffering more than ever under heat stress, and our systems are simply unable to cope. The question we're asking today is, if heat waves are the new normal, are we prepared for it? Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of COgreen. Today we're discussing India's heat waves. My name is Shriya Mohan and I'm joined by two experts today, Mr. Rajendra Ratnoo, Executive Director of the National Institute of Disaster Management, and Chandra, who is the CEO of iFOREST. And today we're really delving into questions such as, are our heat action plans working? Can we look beyond short-term fixes into long-term durable solutions such that we're prepared for a 2050 heat wave, which is going to be far worse than what we're seeing today? And also, can heat waves really be classified as a natural disaster? Let's jump into the conversation. So welcome to COgreen. This is the podcast that we're doing on heat waves. It's an iFOREST environment podcast. Mr. Ratnoo, it's a great pleasure to have you with us. Thanks for joining, CB. My first question is, Mr. Ratnoo, let's start with the big picture. How detrimental are heat waves? If you can set the context a bit, and if you can help us understand what is the government of India doing and what is the National Institute of Disaster Management actually doing around heat waves?
Very long question, but I'll try to do justice. Yes, as far as heat wave's detrimental impact is concerned and at a big picture, if we see 2023, 280 heat wave days were there in across all the cities from India. 2024 we have seen how hot it was. So it is needless to, I think, set the context, and it is beyond doubt that urban heat island impact as well as the number of heat wave days across cities is increasing, and those cities which were not hitherto crossing 45-degree mark, also we are seeing that more frequent days, whether it's Jaipur, Nagpur, these cities, relatively into that bracket, but the number of days where they have crossed 45-degree mark is increasing. So data clearly showing that across the country and particularly in urban areas, this impact of rising temperatures is very, very high. And I think its impact on the poorest of the poor is maximum. Its impact on the that way it is that they are the economic drivers. In the urban area, the poorest of poor is one who provides the economic services. So when the vulnerable, this population gets impacted, your economic and GDP also gets impacted. There is also a enormous impact on health. The amount of pressure that creates on the health public amenities as well as the out-of-pocket expenditure of people increases tremendously, because cardiovascular diseases, the respiratory diseases, there is already a vulnerability and morbidities are there, but then there is a cascading impact of the heat waves which leads to either mortality or increased morbidity and aggravation of these existing morbidities. On the existing services, utilities, there is a huge pressure. Like your grid sometime can go fail, because the amount of power consumption which is happens at a peak hours of heat, whether it's a electricity and other services. So that is again, even your infrastructure damages happen, your roads, bridges, your buildings, wear and tear, they become very high. So in terms of whether it's a individual level, societal level, infrastructure or economy, the impacts are surely evident, scientifically proved, and government is taken cognizance of that, and we see that National Disaster Management Authority had brought out the guidelines in 2016 and they were further amended in 2019, where they have appealed to most of the cities to make their heat action plans and states to make their state level heat action plans. So there is a, though there is no explicit mention in the Disaster Management Act for the heat waves, but many of the states have notified that, and state government of India is encouraging the city governments and other state governments to take mitigation measures for that as per the heat action plans. National Institute of Disaster Management has been doing a multiple programs around this thing. One is directly on heat waves. Another thing, we are working on the water sector. We are working on a nature-based solution. So these are all indirectly, create an environment and microclimate where there's more cooling is possible. So I think it is not only the government that has to, we have to see that at various levels, from individual to government, and breaking silos, whole of the society approach has to be there to deal with this.
As you're saying, it's a very complex problem that requires interdepartmental coordination and all hands on the deck, so to say. See, we last year iFOREST assessed heat action plans in 14 cities and districts, and you had also done a detailed study in Delhi. What were your findings?
I think first of all, the initiative of Government of India, specifically Disaster Management Authority, to come out with a guideline is noteworthy. In 2016 they came out with a guideline. It was revised in 2019. I've heard that there is a new version of guideline which is again coming out. They have learned from the past experience and they're trying to modify and improve the guideline. Having said that, while cities are making heat action plan and district action plan, some states, in fact many states, have also made state heat action plan. The fact is that the way the plans have been made, they are not very actionable, right? They provide a broad framework. Then it leaves it there. Then it is up to a proactive officer or a proactive department to take it forward. So the guideline, the guideline is giving a broader framework. What we need is a guideline plus, which will then provide a clear, actionable plan for cities to act on. I'll give you an example of Delhi. When we reviewed the heat action plan of Delhi, what we found was that the vulnerability assessment of Delhi, for example, was not taking into consideration the outskirts of Delhi. In fact, the highest temperature is Delhi, for example, is not in the middle of the city. It is on the outskirts of the city. Outskirts of the city is also your rural area. You have poor quality building. You have low income group people there. And therefore, outskirts of the city is where, in fact, your vulnerability will be very high. But if you look at the heat action plan of Delhi, the outside of Delhi has been completely ignored. They have come out with a new, I'm talking about the heat action plan, the previous one. I have heard that they have come out with a new heat action plan now. Okay. So the first thing we found was the actionability of the heat action plan. The second thing we found was that responsibility has been assigned to departments without resources. So if you want labor department to make sure that construction workers are provided with amenities during peak heat, then there has to be some amount of resources provided to them as well. Heat action plan are not providing extra resources or extra support to the city governments. That was our second finding. Our third finding was, as Mr. Ratnoo very clearly said, the biggest impact is actually the cascading impact on infrastructure. Yeah. Okay, water supply, electricity, transport infrastructure. Okay, those suffer a lot. In fact, last year we found that the major impact of heat wave was in night time because electricity was not available. In many city, electricity system failed. So heat action plan is not taking into consideration the cascading effect on infrastructure. And how do we build the resilience in these infrastructure?
Even your air conditioners are not meant to, cope up with that temperature.
50 degrees last year, yes, we found
it touched this thing and they failed.
50 degree, when Delhi had 50 degree temperature, ambient temperature was 50 degree, but inside the home the temperature could have been 55, 60 degree. Yeah, warm. No, night could be about 40. Even 40-degree night is really bad, you know. And the last point was that heat action plan is not providing solutions to cool the city. These are relief and rescue plan, right? It is not providing guideline to cool the cities. And we cannot solve heat action, heat impact, extreme heat only through air conditioning. It will create more heat. Therefore, we have to start thinking about how do we cool our cities and our communities and our building. I think that focus was lacking.
I have a side question here. You also found that the current system of declaring heat waves needs revision.
Yes.
Why?
Again, because of the learning from past couple of years. Human body reacts to heat and humidity. It doesn't only reacts to heat. Okay, and therefore, even if the temperature is 35 degree and humidity is 90%, you will really feel very bad. Okay, you will suffer. But if the humidity is below 50 and temperature is 40, it might be a little comfortable. So, and this is especially true for areas where heat and humidity is rising together, coastal areas of India. Okay, southern India, for example, never had heat waves. Okay, but what we are finding now that heat is increasing and so is humidity, which is a common scientific phenomenon. More heat you will have, more evaporation you will have, more humidity you will have. Okay, this is a very simple scientific phenomenon. So what we found was that the current definition of heat wave based on only temperature is excluding significant population of India who are getting affected due to so-called wet bulb temperature, heat and humidity. One. Second, we found was that our heat wave is declared on daytime maximum temperature. But last year, as I'm saying, because iFOREST team was in the field, talking to people, nighttime extreme heat was far more damaging because people couldn't sleep. Okay. So one of our recommendation was that while the temperature has served us so far, in future it is not going to serve us. We'll have to think about multi-criteria for declaring heat waves.
Mr. Ratnoo, what are some of the biggest operational challenges in rolling out heat action plans at a state and district level?
Well, there are multiple challenges. First thing, in terms of uh, you know uh, other than IMD data, the real-time risk assessment of heat, that is monitoring of this thing, is also sometime that at what threshold level, as CB has told, it's a combination of both humidity and heat. So that this understanding in the city governments is still not there. Having this combination of that, even if there's a moderately high temperature but high humidity, so this heat humidity combination makes it little challenging for assessing the threshold level of the risk where you have to caution citizens. So this is on the risk assessment.
And it's also about when do you declare a heat wave,
exactly.
right? Like the timeliness here matters a lot.
Then there are also challenges on the dissemination, that the elite knows, media is making so much of buzz, but who's getting most affected? As CB told, it's the periphery people, those who are marginalized, vulnerable, and they are the ones actually who are working in the hot sun. So how to disseminate this message to them as well as their employers? Now it comes the question of the challenges in terms of siloed approach of governance in different departments, that they are not talking to each other. There is some department, labor is controlled by somebody else, the spaces of the municipal area, that there are so many other challenges, multiple departments come into play, and clearly this delineating their responsibilities and roles becomes very, very important. And it's important to have a whole of government approach, whether it's a city level or state level, where breaking silos and addressing this approach is another governance challenge. Then regulatory challenges in terms of that heat wave has not been, it is very difficult to, because it's a cascading impact. So Disaster Management Act cites the definition of disaster as a catastrophic event which is beyond coping capacity of that particular group. So this is now a debatable. I'm not taking any position, but Point is that heat makes a huge impact on health, but it makes a cascading impact. So it is very difficult scientifically or operationally to define that what is the weightage which can be given to somebody's lifestyle who is having already high level of cholesterol, and if he is giving a heat stroke is leading to a cardiac arrest. Now just defining whether this death is due to cardiovascular region or heat wave regions, both are right. It is due to vulnerability or propensity, or its predisposition is to due to that existing morbidity, but precipitating factor is coming into play of the high heat and temperature. So these are the operational challenges by which, as a relief measure to individual mortality or heat wave impact, government has very difficult to identify and to attribute that. So, but nevertheless, I think it is a high time that we need to review our legislative and institutional framework to understand that we need to imbibe this into our planning process. We have to have mitigation measures. So first thing, intervention has to be in terms of the way we plan our new cities. Second thing, how we can retrofit our existing cities in terms of green spaces, in terms of how we can create a microclimate around water. Uh, if you see the water bodies in the urban areas, totally vanished. I come from Tamil Nadu, Kadar. It is a story everywhere. The Chennai city had so many lakes where today there are colonies. Same is the case with many of the other cities. Even Delhi's old data, if you see, there were many swampy lands and marshlands. They are all vanishing. So these were actually the heat absorbers of the city. So that we are totally doing away with. So I think we have to somewhere see that how in our regulatory framework, having rooftop cooling or rooftop gardening, vertical gardening, etc., can be mandated. If you are making a building with a modern material which is going to increase the urban heat island impact, you have to see that at that society level, at that multi story building level, there has to be mandated measures, and that should become a part of the planning approval, that you'll be doing these mitigation measures to see that, and particularly those areas which are prone to very high temperature.
I wanted to get into the solutions a little later, but I'm glad you've touched upon it. I think two questions I have on the challenges a little more is, how do you deal with interdepartmental coordination? Because that is a major challenge. It really needs all hands on the deck to act. And secondly, how do you then cater to the most vulnerable so that their needs are met and they're covered under these heat action plans?
Well, there is no right mantra. There was a similar challenge. I don't know if there is any learning point where Government of India, we had to the industrial corridor program. We had presented to Honorable Prime Minister something about some 2 industrial corridors in South India, and in that discussion there was a question about how's the about planning process and integration and last mile connectivity and multimodal connectivity. And from this idea we worked for 1 year, and I was directly involved as a joint secretary earlier in commerce and industry. And out of that came a program called PM Gati Shakti, which had broken silos in infrastructure. So it is possible to break silos. It requires a political will, but in this case it can't be a national government which can give directive. It is the leadership at the city level as well as the state level which has to give a clear command. So first challenge is to identifying and recognizing heat as a challenge and a political priority. Once it becomes a political priority, and leadership at the whether it's a bureaucratic level or political level takes note of that, I am sure that this is possible to break the silos.
And about the vulnerable populations being actually till the last mile being covered.
Yeah, this is actually, as I started with the vulnerable population, they are the ones that are having the maximum brunt of that. So entire planning process, I think, if your plan or your governance, success of that governance is measurable criteria or deliverable, is that whether you are able to make an impact on the person in the standing in the last in the line or the last mile. So I always have believed in this thing that inclusivity is the mantra. if we are not able to, so heat action plan, this heat action plan at the city level has to be a participatory exercise. It should not be a top down, and it has to ensure that how we are identifying various vulnerable sectors, which are particularly our casual laborers who are there, our transportation truck drivers, the bus drivers who have to have a high heat of engine, along with that, school children, women, particularly pregnant ladies, elderly, and the people with the chronic diseases. So these are the people and groups, and particularly those who are from low socioeconomic strata and also having the other things, they becomes all the more vulnerable. So it becomes so it has to be integral part of our heat wave action plan. It has to be around that.
Yeah,
it has to be around that, then only we can.
I want to move this discussion forward to the area of demand for cooling. So, CB, my question to you is that our demand for cooling fuels, a vicious cycle, right? Which is driving up AC consumption, more emissions, more warming, and the need for more cooling. Can technology offer a way out?
Absolutely. I mean to say, you must understand that the current air conditioning technology is a 100-year-old technology. And the technology has hit its limit of efficiency. First of all, in any house, an air conditioner is the most environmentally damaging product that you have, even more than a car, by the way. If you consider the coolant that we use in air conditioner, the electricity consumption, the largest carbon footprint of a normal household is from air conditioning. So it has huge environmental impact. The second is it cools inside, but it heats outside. So it will throw in cool air inside, but all the warm air is going outside. So it is contributing to something called as urban heat island, which is heating the city. Now, the more urban heat island is, you require more cooling. Therefore, the vicious cycle. We need to break this vicious cycle by creating conditions which will reduce the demand for cooling. And the way we can reduce the demand for cooling is by making our buildings cool first. Okay. First of all, let's make our city cool. Blue-green infrastructure, water bodies, parks, open areas, reducing something called as albedo, which is heating the city. Then we have to cool buildings. After we have cooled our building, then we come to appliance. Right now, we are not doing anything about city and building. We are doing everything about appliance. So we have to invert that pyramid. And then in cooling also, we have technology which is emerging, which is far more efficient. Think about the traditional cooling technology. They all were water-based technology. If you look at India, heat is not new to India. We are a hot and humid climate. Okay? And our forefathers, though they were not subjected to such high heat, okay, they found an answer in heating through building design and through water-based cooling technology. The traditional khas system was evaporative cooling. You have something through which water is there and the air is passing, the air is being cooled, and the inside is being cooled. So water-based technology, which is evaporative technology, is advancing rapidly now. They are much more different than the traditional water coolers. They are better. They bring in less humidity. Modern technologies are coming there. There's district cooling which is coming, which means that instead of every room having an air conditioner, can we have a centralized, efficient air conditioner? Similar to all of us getting electric gas today, we can get a cooling pipe in our home, which can provide cooling in every room. So I think with traditional knowledge and technology and modern innovation, we can break the vicious cycle of air conditioning. And that is the way we have to look at. Otherwise, individual room-based air conditioner is not sustainable in any scenario. It will create more problems.
That's a very valid point. Back to heat waves, this question is for both of you, but why are we not declaring heat waves as a natural disaster?
I think he has already answered that. Okay, let me answer why it is. It is, see, once you declare anything as a natural disaster, then you have to make some relief payment to individuals. Okay, am I right? That is one of the criteria. Which means that, So it is quite easy if there is an accident, someone dies and someone is injured. You know that that person has died or injured because of accident, and therefore direct causation can be done. If the cause is there, and government, it is easy for government to make that payment. In case of heat wave, it is difficult. Dr. Ratnoo was very correct in this, that the impact of heat wave, there are few direct impact that we can, like heat stroke. Someone getting a heat stroke in the middle of the day and dying can be easily identified. But the larger impact of heat wave is cascading. Okay? It is your pre-existing condition, and then heat wave adding a layer to it.
So your mortality shoots up during that period.
Even if it shoots up, it's very difficult for administration
To attribute
that. Okay, I think we can get rid of this problem by saying that for certain disaster, the individual payment will not be the primary factor. We should think about, so even if government can, I would recommend government, national government, to declare heat wave as a natural disaster, but the payment should be to cool the city, to cool the building, to build resilience, rather than to pay out to individual victims. Okay, then it is possible. So I think we need to tweak that, right?
I want to move to geoengineering. You've written columns on this, CV, but Mr. Ratnoo, also I want to know, can it be a solution for a heat wave? There's some bizarre ideas out there.
So this is, heat wave is now becoming a reason why people are saying that we will spray aerosol in the atmosphere to cool the planet. Okay, and there is a major research happening across the world, including in our country. DST has funded some of the project in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, where they will spray aerosol, sulfur aerosol in the stratosphere, which is similar to what happens in volcano. So when there is a large volcano eruption, the aerosol goes till at stratosphere and it cools the planet. So these scientists are trying to replicate the volcanic impact to cool the planet, and they are calling it as stratospheric aerosol injection, SAI. This is geoengineering. And I did some research on geoengineering, and I found that while it might cool, the negative impact is going to be huge. We only know that it will cool the planet, but cooling the planet will also mean it will affect the hydrological cycle.
Agriculture
cycle, vegetation cycle. These scientists are, like any scientific research, are very focused on one.
Actually, science goes into reductionism. It isolates the variables and is able to, like in governance, one department sees only that minutely. So science is no exception. Science also has this tendency of isolating variable and focusing on that impact itself. And many a times we have, so I'm a very strong supporter of nature-based solutions, that nature has, we have messed up with the nature, and the solution also lies in the nature. In the ecology, in the microclimate, we have to work on that level rather than these artificial solutions, which sometimes at surface value may look very intelligent, but over the period of time we may have a impact which may be everlasting and non-reversible. When plastic came, people said, wow, what a discovery, it's such a green product, because we had to cut trees to do packaging in paper and other thing, and now we have a wonderful product which saves trees, it's a waterproof, it's a long life, and there can't be better product. And we today see that what a kind of menace it has created. So nature has its own systems, and nature systems are circular and they are not linear. So anything which is something which is based on this principle may sustain. But if we otherwise have production, again aerosol will require extraction from somewhere, production somewhere, injection somewhere, and sustenance. So it is again a linear model. No linear model can be sustainable and can be good for environment.
Any thoughts further?
No, yeah, my whole thing is that something as important as tinkering with the system of the planet has to be done with 360-degree view. it cannot be that I am only thinking about cooling the planet. We also have to understand, say for example, monsoon in India. Monsoon in India is a very delicate system of a very small temperature difference between land and ocean. Very, very minute difference. This massive water that falls on the subcontinent happens because of very small 1 or 2 degree difference in temperature between land and ocean. Now, suppose I am cooling the planet, what effect it will have on monsoon? Okay. Now, these kind of things, I don't think scientific or so-called machine learning and artificial intelligence have that kind of understanding that we can do. So, I am not at all, while I understand the need to keep learning, I'm not stopping scientific, neither I want to stop scientific research in this field. Learn. But application of science has to be done very, very carefully. And 150 years of industrial revolution, 200 years, closing to 200 years, is showing to us that without thinking application, science can be problematic for the society.
Right, we could create a Frankenstein.
Yeah, we can create far more problem, and plastic
Absolutely.
is a very, very clear example.
I'm moving to my last question. I'd like to hear from both of you, what are our recommendations to people at an individual level to save themselves, to city governments as well? Like to improve our resilience, to act better when it comes to heat waves.
Though I'm born in Thar Desert, so I know what heat is, and we have always been telling that there is so much of this thing, but now suddenly everybody is talking about heat because our friends from West, when the temperature risen in the European countries and they're shown, so it has become a global narrative. Then it has always been a problem not having electricity, but we had traditional coping up strategies at individual level. So let us try to understand that our traditional knowledge to cope up with heat is very much there. We have to, while adopt the modern science and medicinal thing, but at the same time related to our food, related to our habits, Tair sadam in Tamil Nadu is very common, or more, or the what we call buttermilk or chach in North India, lemon, nibu pani. Similarly, having matkas and pyau system in North India, many places where you have public places where people could take shelter and take cold water. So these all things have been there at our traditional knowledge. So to at individual level, I think this certain things which are unlearned over the period of time, we have to relearn those things and add something more from science, so that at individual level there is a better coping up, also in terms of clothing, in terms of keeping a water bottle and other things. These are small little things which I think can make a huge difference. At So similarly at all levels, so this is at the individual level, but similarly the city level, we have enough talked about having a overall heat action plan. But I like to emphasize that planting more trees, having more greening, whether rural or urban area, everywhere our tree cover is vanishing, and also having a appropriate agroclimatically suitable trees which are appropriate to that particular climatic zone is very important. Otherwise, having monoculture farming and afforestation also has its consequences. So we have to understand every 10% of increase in forest cover in cities leads to 1 to 1.5 degree temperature comes down. Singapore is a good example that how 3 to 4 degree temperature has been reduced by creating green spaces in the city. So having more greening, having more integration to our micro planning, looking at our rooftops, how to green them, how to have more kitchen gardens with us, so that on one side we get organic farm products, on the other side the heat impact is less, and on third side we have more composting from whatever was going to our dump yard can be used at the household or a community level. Similarly, also breaking the silos of governance and having a whole city as whole city governance approach. And all the more important is that public participation, community involvement. It should not become a government plan. And also having social and behavioral change dimension. The communication strategies have to focus not only at dissemination of knowledge but also at social and behavioral change. When it is aggregated at large level, it has a huge impact.
CB, from you?
Absolutely. I come from Eastern India, and during summer we always used to get something called as bel ka sarbat, okay, to cool your stomach. Okay. Every part of India has specific food and dietary, system for peak summer. Somehow we have forgotten that, okay, across the country. So at the individual level, I think we need to go back and look at our diet itself, which will build our resilience, individual resilience uh, uh, against the heat. Second is hydration, of course. We all have to make sure that we are very, well hydrated. We all work in, by the way, we are forgetting the importance of hydration because we all are sitting inside in air conditioning. But that doesn't mean your body is not getting dehydrated. Okay, so hydration in any season, but particularly during peak summer, is very important. At the city level, again, bring back that, the social idea of supporting each other. Having places where, poor can get cool water, cool shelter. Not everyone can afford air conditioning. With wealth increasing in the country, we can do better than the past. Okay. पहले जमाने में नगर सेठ used to make dharamshalas of where people can go and sleep during daytime. Also identify, the importance of regional temperature variations. So when I went to Ahmedabad for the first time, I found that during peak summer, middle of the day the city was closed. Okay. They used to work from early morning till day, and I think that was the practice in Rajasthan also.
Yeah.
The siesta time when,
Yeah. See, even Karnataka,
2
people.
or 3 hours
11, 12
during
से मतलब up to 3, 4 o'clock,
4 o'clock when there's a peak heat, you shut down. I think those are important. Okay, why are we fighting against the nature? Okay, I think if people can work from in the late evening and get rest during the daytime, that is also fine. So I think all these practices will have to come together to make sure that we deal with heat. Because I'm saying this because I believe that our emissions are not going down. See, the global temperature will only reduce if emission goes down. Those emissions are not going down. Okay, we are burning more fossil fuel than ever before. So what heat we are feeling right now is going to get worse in the future. Next generation and next to next generation is going to be far more affected than what we are. So we have to think now for the future, not only present, to address heat wave.
Think for the future. And just to wrap this discussion, I think I've learned a lot from the two of you in terms of policy suggestions, whether it's increasing tree cover, whether it's district cooling as a solution, or even just bel ka sharbat and tair sadam. It's been a wonderfully insightful discussion. Thank you, Mr. Ratnoo and CB. Please stay tuned into COgreen for our next episode. Follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram for more. Thanks for watching.